Formula 1 returns after a short winter break for the 2020 Formula 1 season. The main news was, of course, that there was a huge big regulation change, with many teams choosing to go with new manufacturers as opposed to existing suppliers. Subsequently, Honda actually being forced out of the sport. The FIA also announced that after the Australian Grand Prix last season that the engine regulations would take a slight change for 2020. Instead of being V12s, as they previously stated, they'd actually be V10s. This meant that all the engine manufacturers had to scramble around and change the parts of V10s, but each and every one of them managed to do so. The FIA said they would have helped any engine manufacturer that was unable to change from V12 to V10. Fortunately, though, none of the 9 manufacturers needed the FIA's help. Apart from that, there is also simpler front wing designs in trying to aid overtaking. The FIA felt that overtaking could be made a little bit simpler, as opposed to having the numerous DRS overtakes, especially, although mind you still need with DRS to face against the Audi engine and Williams, you probably wouldn't be enough. The only other regulation change was the point system had been changed. After 9 seasons of the 25-18 etc. point system, the FIA decided that there were too few teams to be awarding points for half the grid, and decided that they needed a point system that could be invoked until such time more teams joined the grid. Subsequently, they decided to go back to the 90s point system of 10 for first place, 6 for second, 4 for third, 3 for fourth, 2 for fifth, and 1 point for sixth place. The FIA did discuss adding additional points for fast lap and pole, but after this discussion they decided that they would not be adding additional points for these. They also announced that they would be continuing everything else as the same, which means there'll be only the one qualifying session, once again for the drivers to set their fastest time in each of the 2 sessions. This was, of course, has been the format since 2016, and of course was a very popular format right up until the early 2000s. But now let's take you through the drivers and teams for the 2020 Final Fantasy Formula 1 grid. The first team is the reigning world champions in both the Constructors and Drivers' Championship, of course, Ferrari. Wouldn't be Formula 1 without Ferrari being with it, and the fact that they are here for the 70th anniversary since the inaugural championship back in 1950. Ferrari have been reaping the rewards too in terms of sponsorship. Many big name sponsors have moved to the team, such as Dior, AT&T, Delta, Samsung and others, meaning that they are able to generate a bigger operating revenue and subsequently afford an all-star lineup. With Sebastian Vettel having left already back in 2019, they promoted Charles Leclerc, who went on to win the 2019 World Championship. However, this alienated Lewis Hamilton. Hamilton left the team by mutual consent before the last round of the season, the Australian Grand Prix, and subsequently got replaced by Giovinazzi. However, Ferrari felt that Giovinazzi wasn't quite ready yet, especially the fact they had the opportunity to sign another superstar, Max Verstappen, comes to Ferrari after being upset with Red Bull's position of not being able to get race wins. The Dutch driver joins Ferrari on a 2-year deal. And it'd be interesting to see which of the young guns of Ferrari will come out on top, and which will unfortunately falter and be yet to see if they stay at the team beyond 2020. In terms of their car remains very good in terms of, and seems to have the best of all-round pace, being good in the straight line and very good in the corners. The next team up is Williams. Williams were unfortunate to come off as second best in 2019, but this was a massive improvement on their previous time in 2017, where they were the slowest and most unreliable team on the grid. Williams also continue their partnership with Audi. Audi say they were happy to continue with Williams for yet another year and actually signed a new 3-year deal to supply engines to Williams. They said they will be They said that they will continue with their 40% stake as part of Williams. Of course, Williams is one of the few companies in Formula One that is actually on the stock market, with Audi owning 40% of the shares. And they have said they continue to invest in Williams facilities in the United Kingdom, as well as their own facilities in Germany. With Audi providing some additional cash to help Williams get even closer to the World Championship than they were before, they decided to swap out Nico Rosberg. Rosberg continues, however, as team principal, saying that the added pressure from races, although he says he loves racing, he wants to now move on with his life and continue to be the team principal. He said he would not be the team's manager, however, and says he would not be attending all the races, mainly the European rounds and any rounds that the team feels that marketing and additional other responsibilities that Rosberg will have is required. In terms of their driving lineup, well, they retained Sergio Perez for yet another year after he jumped ship from Force India in 2017. Since then, the Mexican went on to win 5 Grand Prix last year and even set 7 fastest laps, something that he was very happy with. However, a spite of reliability issues at the end of 2019 has meant that Perez came short to Charles Leclerc. And now Perez's teammate Fernando Alonso makes a 3rd return to the sport. Alonso previously returned in 2017. However, after a dismal run at Mercedes, he decided to leave again, with obviously F1 not being run in 2018 and 2019 being unable to find a drive. But Rosberg says that he is happy to have Alonso. He says that he brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to the team, and says Alonso is in the right place to take the team forward for the next 2 years, which is the length of Alonso's new contracts. The next team is Renault. Renault saw a surge in performance and managed to become through the midfield to become a front runner later in the season. It's unfortunate that their upgrades didn't come through earlier in the season, otherwise they might have been able to challenge for the title, but nevertheless Renault were happy with the fact they managed to get third place last year. The goal now for Renault is to win more races, get consistently both drivers on the podium, and also make sure that trying to push for the Drivers and Constructors World Championship. Renault, however, continue with their blue and black sponsorship and continue with many of their long-term sponsors, including HP. Renault says they are happy to continue to be in the sport despite the fact that they withdrew from Formula E to focus on Formula 1. They said that they would not reverse that decision anytime soon, especially even though that Formula E grew further than Formula 1, especially in this 2018 when Formula 1 wasn't even on. In terms of their drivers, Pierre Gasly retains his drive after winning a couple of Grand Prix last year for the side, and their only Grand Prix, as Hulkenberg was only. Hulkenberg left the team at the end of 2019 saying he wanted a fresh challenge, and instead they replaced him with Daniel Ricciardo, the Australian who was looking for a World Championship. He comes in to partner Gasly and says he's looking forward to working with Gasly, a young driver, seeing how he can develop himself with Gasly's rise to the front, and also how he can develop the car and the team for a front drive, hopefully to get wins and podiums in 2020. The next team is Red Bull, and as you can see from the livery, they have got BMW sponsorship and branding for the 2020 season. BMW signed a new 5-year deal to provide engines and bought out part of the team, even a 20% stake in the team, with the option to increase that percentage depending on performances this year to at least 45, and even possibly up to 60, right? Potentially meaning Red Bull could become the minority step partner of the team, something that the heads of Red Bull have thought about, considering the fact that Formula 1 isn't as popular now as Formula E. Despite this, Red Bull stayed true to Formula 1, but with the departure of Verstappen to Ferrari, they needed to make a statement signing, and there was two people on the table, Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel. Vettel had announced already that he would be leaving Mercedes after their woeful season at the end in 2019, and of course Ferrari and Hamilton parted ways before the Australian Grand Prix in 2019. In the end, however, though, they went with Vettel. Vettel decided was the more interesting candidate, especially the fact that he knew the team from before during his 5 years between 2009 and 2014. He returns to the team for 2020 alongside Nico Hulkenberg, who was pinched from Renault. Hulkenberg, despite not actually getting a victory, did very well for Renault last year, getting some lower podiums, raking his duck all the way back from 2010. He joins Red Bull as their backup driver for 2020, and their main drive is to make sure that Vettel gets wins and Hulkenberg finishes in second place. However, it is yet to be known whether or not the BMW engine will be powerful enough to power the Red Bull Sashi, especially the fact that Christian Horner has already considered stepping down, especially the fact that his one-time pal Adrian Newey has already left to go and focus on the Extreme E Racing Series and partner Veloce Motorsports. Despite that, both Vettel and Hulkenberg will be optimistic that BMW are preparing to push for the front and for the World Championship. The next team is Mercedes. Mercedes had an absolutely woeful end to the season, despite the fact they had a very bright start, with Valtteri Bottas getting the team's only win in 2019. He stays at the team for 2020. In terms of Mercedes, though they did consider pulling out of the sport altogether, however, they were convinced by Lewis Hamilton, who returns to the team to be in a way since 2015, to remain in the sport. The team retains their Siemens sponsorship and most of the other sponsors that they have over the past few years. In terms of their drivers, with Hamilton returning, he aims to get them to the World Championship, and with the regulations stating that the Sashi side has to be completed, with Mercedes finally getting their upgrade to pass testing that they had due in 2019. This means that Mercedes are expect to be a lot closer to the front during 2020 and back to where they were during the earlier part of 2019. Russell and Ocon said they were happy to move to Formula E, but they stated they did not want to go there for too long, and ultimately said that they wanted a drive at the top team for 2021. This means that either Bottas or Hamilton may have to move away. Both of them have only signed one-year deals. Hamilton may choose to retire, and Bottas may ultimately get fired from the team. The next team up is McLaren. McLaren had a difficult 2018 despite Daniel Ricciardo winning the Japanese Grand Prix. 2019 was a dismal year for Carlos Sainz, despite the fact Ricciardo managed to score 91 points and win the 2019 Japanese Grand Prix. Sainz struggled during the middle part of the season and went on a non-scoring run, and only in the end managed to score 11 points, most of those at the end of the season. And McLaren have another problem. Renault announced they would not be supplying anybody else other than themselves in 2020, meaning that McLaren needed a new engine supplier. This, of course, being the third time in 5 years that McLaren needs a new engine supplier since Mercedes ended their long-standing partnership in 2015. McLaren decided to go after an engine manufacturer that was looking to return to the sport, but not as a full team. And they stumbled upon Porsche. Porsche had been looking a way back since it would be emerged that Audi's success during the 2019 season of winning races, Mercedes' dominance in the earlier part of the hybrid era, and also the resurgence of BMW. Even if as only a technical partner to cars by BMW last season, they have since gone on to provide an engine for Red Bull. Porsche were also looking to reap the rewards of success. However, their engine doesn't seem to have much power. Them and Mercedes have gone for a slightly different configuration of layout, which is why their engines sound different to the other 7. Whether or not this will be faster, time will tell, but the pre-season pace shows that McLaren haven't made as much progress as they would like in the winter testing period. But definitely McLaren are optimistic. Porsche say it is early days in their relationship, again the team that they supplied in the middle part of the 1980s before McLaren turned to Honda in the latter part, won Alain Prost 2 of his 4 World Championships. And of course, they have retained Carlos Sainz as their driver. Sainz says he was happy to retain his and hopes to live up to his 2016 World Championship by delivering solid points finishes for McLaren once the upgrades start to come through for the team. However, this is a team in transition, and with not many people willing to make the move to McLaren, McLaren took the bold step to promote the F2 2019 champion Lando Norris. Norris becomes the first Brit to drive for the team since Jenson Button left back in late 2015, and since then McLaren have had an up and down turbulent time, winning 2 races. They hope though that Norris and Sainz together will be able to push McLaren up the midfield and be able to catch Renault up for the podium. The next team up is Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo has suffered a turbulent winter with the departure of Antonio Giovinazzi. For Alfa, it is all about making progress. They made very good progress at the latter half of 2019 season, where Giovinazzi scored a whole load of points and even managed to get once up to 6th place. The team are hoping that they can progress with that. The only customer team left on the grid now, as they are still using Ferrari's engines, they look to hopefully firmly match in the midfield. In terms of their driver lineup, they retain Kimi Räikkönen, who returns after his race ban in the Australian Grand Prix, which means that Räikkönen will soon be entering his 20th year if he retains himself for next year in Formula 1. And he is joined by Antonio Fuoco, who impressed Alfa Romeo's bosses in Australia, so much so that they had decided to award him the race seat. It turns out that Fuoco's temporary teammate in Australia, Lorandi, has been given some testing role at Alfa Romeo and Ferrari, and as of yet is just shy of the testing time to be able to enter Formula 1. Ferrari are also keen to promote Mick Schumacher to the team. However, after the FIA reviewed the decision to allow Mick Schumacher to enter the sport in 2017, they decided to reverse their decision, and instead Schumacher had to drop down to Formula 2 again, as he missed out on the title once again, meaning he did not get even enough super license points to qualify for a position. However, should Schumacher do, it is likely that Raikkonen will be the one that makes way and retires from the sport, and not Fuoco. And now we come to the first of our 3 new teams. And the first team is taking over from buying out Carlsberg BMW is H&M. The clothes retailer buys a 90% stake in the team, with the previous rules still in place, meaning that there cannot be a majority. There has to be more than one owner of the team. Subsequently, the Finnish shipping line Viking Line has the majority of the minor shares in the team. And a lot has changed over with the team, with BMW leaving and taking Carlsberg, and also the fact that H&M had to give up their spot in their shares in FOM. Formula One Management, known as FOM, had been sold, had its 2/3 of it sold back in 2019 by Liberty Media, one to Heineken and the other share to H&M. However, H&M sold their shares before completing the deal to the Danish retailer Clas Ohlson. Subsequently, there would be no conflict of interest. Despite the fact Clas Ohlson used to sponsor Carlsberg BMW team, the FIA later ruled out any conflict of interest, putting the matter to bed. In terms of their driver lineup, they retain Peter Harmson after he managed to win twice last year for the team. And the person that comes with them comes because of their engine. H&M went looking for an engine supplier after Renault announced they wouldn't be supplying any engines. Renault had previously supplied the Carlsberg BMW team in 2019. They originally looked at Volvo. However, after Volvo's torrid time in 2016, which they only last until the Canadian Grand Prix, Volvo declined to take part. Subsequently, they also asked Koenigsegg if they would prepare an engine, but Koenigsegg said they would not be ready. The team did, however, got point in the direction of CN Racing. The team and Polestar were also rumoured to be providing electrical support for the team. However, Polestar refused to make the engine as the engines in Formula One are still powered by petrol and not, albeit a refined form, but still they haven't yet got to the place where Polestar would be happy to supply an engine. Well, Koenigsegg not ready, H&M had to look further afield, and they found an engine supplier willing to take place. With Porsche joining the sport as part of VW's decision to expand its presence in the sport alongside Audi, Fiat decided it wanted to do the same, and subsequently decided that not only Ferrari should be in the sport, and subsequently decided to offer Maserati engines to H&M for 2020, bringing back an old name to the sport. Not only that, Fiat then also offered, against Ferrari's wishes as well, Antonio Giovinazzi to race alongside Harmson. Giovinazzi said he would leave the team, and the Fiat bosses decided to overrule Ferrari and say that Giovinazzi deserves a chance to prove himself in a better team. Subsequently, Harmson is happy to have his former teammate Giovinazzi alongside him from his days at Alfa Romeo back in 2016, and the team hope that they can carry that success further up the grid and challenge for race wins and podiums in 2020. The penultimate team of this pre-season report is Aston Martin. Brabham. Yes, an old name partners with a new name. Aston Martin decided that after being shoved out by Red Bull, Aston Martin decided that they needed a team. They bought out the Force One team after Mercedes decided they did not want to have their second tier side in Formula 1, but rather in Formula E. Subsequently, Aston Martin made them an offer, but it wasn't enough to satisfy Mercedes bosses, and subsequently teamed up with Brabham to give Mercedes an offer they could not refuse. Aston Martin retained Stoffel Vandoorne, who was at Red Bull in 2019, who worked strongly with the Aston Martin engineers on building that engine for 2020. Alongside him is Luca Giotto on loan from Williams. With the team needing some money and Williams Audi prepared to pay, Aston Martin Brabham could not refuse to give the young Italian his debut in Formula 1. Although their initial pace looks to be slow, they are working on upgrades, and the new Aston Martin engine will soon hopefully take place. The Brabham engineers are also working on improving the chassis in the areas that Aston Martin could not do, and also in areas where Force One couldn't do before. And the final team is Jaguar. Jaguar have been interested in expanding their motor racing program since they entered Formula E. And subsequently, they decided that they wanted to re-enter Formula 1 and ironically bought out Toro Rosso. Of course, Jaguar was sold back in the end of 2004 to Red Bull, who then entered from 2005 onwards as the current Red Bull team. Jaguar, of course, have taken away, which means the little town in Italy that was home to Minardi and Toro Rosso has lost, unfortunately, its jobs. However, Alfa Romeo have come in to save the town and announced they will be launching some sports car racing from the factory there. Jaguar themselves have moved everything to Britain, where their main base is, where they have made their own engine and chassis. Despite this, it being an all-new engine and all-new chassis, they look like to be one of the slowest teams on the grid. They say their drivers need to be patient with the performance that they've got. They have pinched Kevin Magnussen, the Dane, who showed some promise in the latter stages of last year for Carlsberg BMW. And alongside him is Formula 2 runner-up Nick De Vries. who joins the experienced Dane. Jaguar say they appreciate they'll be back to begin with, but their aim for this season at least is to get a couple of points on the board and focus then on climbing the midfield for 2021. So before we finish today's pre-season report, it is time to go through the 16 race calendar, which has seen a little bit of change because the European season has reversed. Brazil once again opens the calendar, but Mexico comes in surprisingly at round 2. The United States moves to round 3 and Canada at round 4. Britain is round 5, Belgium at 6, Germany 7, Austria 8, Hungary 9, Italy 10, Monaco 11 and Spain 12. The race that has been left off is France, after it was judged that the race in France was too appalling. France may make a return in future seasons. Bahrain also comes in, as it agreed a deal with Formula One to host an event for a single year, with the ending of the season at China, Japan and Australia unchanged from last season. So with that then, that is it from pre-season testing. Join us again next week for round 1, the Brazilian Grand Prix, but until then, we'll see you next time. Take care, enjoy your day, thank you for watching and goodbye.